Okay, so you know I know. You don't have it. Well, you should say, I'll make some copies right here. That's a beautiful plastic board. Yeah. This is a vacant board, so we're gonna do a modification to that. Okay. Kind of how. Tell me, the brace feeling, how you manage to do that?
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah. Oh, the actual meeting, we got. No, we're gonna start, because that computer's not working, I don't know who else didn't get there, I don't know what to, we got, I mean.
I just have the actual.
No, I'm talking about this walk-on item. Is that in your pack? All right, this is the same thing as that. Yeah, this is what. Okay, this is good, I can read it. All right. Walk on, everybody can get one.
Good evening.
Promise to give them back. All right.
At least I was honest.
And that's not quite amazing.
No hugging. COVID, that's right. COVID taught us not to hug each other. Then we put our sneeze, they say sneeze on yourself.
Had to be real.
Wait a minute, they say sneeze on yourself. Then hug me.
Oh, yeah.
Blah.
Oh, we learned how to be real clean.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I know.
Hi, how you doing? Fine, how are you?
Hello, everybody.
If you had the, I don't know, was walk on time. Yeah, that's what you said, but they said some of their emails were not working. So, okay.
Okay. Workshop.
Yeah.
Like,
Thank you, Jesus. And they just,
like. Yeah. We're doing something with the school board this week, but we having a big back to school rally. Take the kids to come down with free food, bouncy houses, entertainment, a stage, and it's a lot. So I think we gotta be there at 9 o'clock.
hey, how are you, Mom? You okay? Great, great, great. Let's go get my stuff together.
The hot dogs, hamburgers,
Great, sure.
oh, free cinnamon bun, lemonade.
Hi, how are you? Good.
What's going on? Anything?
Nothing, ma'am.
Anything you need to tell me?
Not that I know of. Anything you want to ask me? So we're good. All right.
Right, well, I didn't know.
Right. Okay.
I'm just checking in.
I'm like, I can see it, getting to see it again. Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 6 p.m. I'd like to call the Highland Park City Council in-person and virtual workshop meeting to order for Monday, July 17th, 2023. Madam Clerk, if you would be so kind as to call the roll.
Councilman Ashafi. Councilwoman Martin.
Here.
Councilwoman Manica.
Here.
Council President Robinson.
Here.
Council President Thomas.
Here. Thank you very much. So tonight's workshop is dedicated specifically to the discussion of the blight ordinance. I'm going to rely on Ms. Burton and the people from the department heads to walk us through this. Do we have Mr. Malone and Mr. Haywood on the line?
Mr. Malone should be here in person.
Okay,
We do have Frank Haywood on the line.
Yes, I'm here.
okay. So I think that we'll take things out of order. Mr. Haywood, since we have you here, and Mr. Malone is yet to arrive, if you would be kind enough to take us through the dangerous buildings as it relates to the current ordinance.
Okay. The city of Highland Park, we have
Hold
adopted.
on.
Hold on a second.
Huh?
Okay. Can we get the volume, Mr. Lackey, how can we get the volume adjusted in here?
That remote control right there in front of Councilwoman Robinson. Just the volume needs to be turned up.
Okay, Mr. Haywood, forgive our technical difficulty. If you would go ahead, we're starting for those people in the audience.
No
On the agenda items for the blighted properties, Mr. Haywood's going to talk to us about dangerous buildings.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
We can.
The city of Highland Park has adopted the International Property Maintenance Code and the state of Michigan Building Code, both the commercial and residential. Most of the properties that are cited under the dangerous building are listed under the property maintenance code. It's section 108. The building official, which is myself, tags or identifies structures and or equipment that been done safe. Within the property maintenance code, there's multiple items that allow the exploration to be made. Once a property or structure has been identified, an enforcement is created, and we follow the notice procedure listed in the code, the property is identified, placarded, and then the property owner on record is sent notice that the structure or equipment is unsafe, and they have a specific to respond. Typically, if they don't respond, we will issue tickets and civil enforcement tickets through Officer Malone. And unfortunately, if they don't follow through with that, we do often proceed to legal action with the city council. I've given Ms. Burton copies, and I think she was going to copy everyone on samples of the enforcement letters. And I had attached a copy of the property maintenance PDF file for copies as well, so everyone can see there's 10 items that a structure can be declared unsafe and dangerous.
So, Mr. Haywood, can you go through some of those, because
Sure.
some of the person's emails were not working.
Sure.
So can you just what's required?
Yeah, let's go through and they're a little wordy. So the unsafe structure, unsafe equipment, structure unfit for human occupancy, unlawful structure, and dangerous structures are the main categories. Underneath the dangerous structure, there are 11 items that can be used. Any portion of the building structure or that has been damaged by fire, earthquake, wind, flood, deterioration, neglect, abandonment, vandalism, or any other cause to such an extent that is likely to a partial or complete collapse is one item. Let's see. The building of the or structure is neglected, damaged, dilapidated, unsecured, or abandoned so as to become an attractive nuisance to children who might play in the building or structure to their danger, becomes a harbor for vagrants, criminals, or immoral persons, or enables persons to resort to the building or structure for committing a nuisance or unlawful act. Let's see. Any building structure has been constructed, exists, or is maintained in violation of any specific requirement or prohibition applicable to such building or structure provided by the approved building or fire code of the jurisdiction, or any law or ordinance to such an extent as to present either a substantial risk of fire, building collapse, or any other threat to life and safety. A building or structure used or intended to be used for dwelling because of inadequate maintenance, dilapidation, decay, damage, faulty construction or arrangement, inadequate light, ventilation, mechanical or plumbing system, or otherwise is determined by the code official to be unsanitary, unsafe for human habitation, or in such a condition as to likely cause sickness or disease. This next one is another one that we use as our main issue too. Any building or structure because of lack of sufficient or proper fire resistant rated construction, fire protection, electrical systems, fuel connections, mechanical systems, plumbing systems are caused by the code official to be threat to life or health. So there's numerous items that we can use at our disposal to declare. Typically, we try not to put that initially. The enforcement process is to give notice, which allows the owner to respond with a plan of action to correct the violations or make the house or structure fit and sanitary and safe for occupancy. Much prefer that than the latter, but sometimes we do have to move it along to legal.
Mr. Haywood, unfortunately, your voice is coming through in and out. So I don't know the audience in terms of the ability to hear, but it's not clear. To have you back for another workshop because it didn't come through very clear.
Okay,
Can it-
I can hear you. Yeah, I'm getting now I'm hearing some audio feedback.
So the issue is that the TV is too loud. It's feeding into the mic, feeding back into the system.
Okay, turn it down a little bit. Let's see.
Try us again, Mr. Haywood.
Okay, can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, sounds much better on my end all of a sudden. What I was saying with those
Just-
10,
And just hit your bullet points.
yeah, the we use notices to declare them dangerous when they become faulty, dilapidated, or deteriorated and cause neglect and is possible to create a nuisance and risks a substantial life and safety to the public and others. We typically send out a notice in an enforcement letter, try to get the property owners to work with us to bring the buildings back. That's a lot more preferred in my eyes than to go right to legal counsel. But unfortunately, we try to notify business or property owners, and if they do work with us, we certainly try. And if they don't, then we turn it over to legal counsel.
Okay. So how are the properties brought to your attention? What are the different ways the properties are brought to your attention, Mr. Haywood?
Were you able to hear, sir? She asked, how are the different ways that the properties come to your office or raise the attention of your office?
A lot of them are by, I drive around the city pretty regular and identify stuff when I see the structures. Some of them are by a neighborhood complaint that we respond to whenever anybody calls in and has a concern or an issue. We follow up with a complaint or by enforcement, but a lot of them are done by driving through the city and observing the structures.
Are there a certain number of times that you actually have to either send a letter or, once tickets are issued before it's declared to be a dangerous building?
I can know if I have caused upon seeing a structure in a depending upon the extent of the problem, I can declare the structure dangerous, upon seeing it. If it's in a state that it could collapse, I can declare it dangerous right then. The structures are posted with a red placard card, and then a enforcement letter is mailed to the property owner of record and given them 14 days to respond to the city to get a hold of us to discuss what action will be taking place. Other structures, I do some research as to if utilities are working, if there's any water service, if there's any gas, depending upon the time of year. If I see structures without gas meters, it may not be declared dangerous, but it'll be declared an unsafe structure and unfit for occupancy. No one is allowed to occupy a building without sanitary facilities. And then during the winter months, structures are required by the code to have an ambient temperature maintained. So if I find out if a structure has no heat source, then that's also notified.
Okay, so having heard this information, council, I wanted to turn the floor over to members if they had questions for Mr. Haywood as it relates to the current nuisance abatement ordinance. That ordinance number is 21-0002. Mr. Al-Shafi?
Okay, so, sorry about that. So we have in this city quite a bit of work that needs to be done. And residents are doing their best to try to keep up with the jungles that are growing in their backyards. My question is, to what type of leniency does Mr. Haywood or Mr. Malone offer to the residents of Highland Park who are trying to get some things done, a little bit short of cash? Things are a little bit tight. Everybody knows how this goes, okay? It takes time to come out of a jungle that has grown up over 20 years. What type of leeway are we giving to the residents to give them enough time and enough opportunity to correct these problems before they wind up in our glorious Judge Bridget officer's courtroom and fine $175 or more? What type of leeway are we giving to the residents? Because I don't think there's a resident here who doesn't have a jungle growing in their backyard that they're fighting every day, every year. So what type of leeway do we give to the residents?
Well, myself, sorry for jumping in there, Najee, but myself, I typically will work with anyone who responds to a letter. If they will call me, email me, or come into City Hall, more than willing and happy to work with anybody, because one, I'm getting a response. I probably, unfortunately, get a 5% response to my enforcement letters, which we use the best records that we have on file, and if folks ignore the enforcement, I will turn it over to code enforcement to follow up. But if anybody comes in, I would much prefer to not put further burden on a person as long as they're making positive advancement. And that doesn't even, doesn't mean they have to start immediately, but if they give me a work plan on any enforcement, unless it's an urgent life safety matter, I will work with anybody and would prefer to work with folks, because the improvement is the end goal. If we're writing tickets and spending everybody's money on court costs, they're not repairing the house. So personally, I'm willing to work with anybody and want to work with everyone, but they have to contact me and not ignore the letters.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Haywood. We're on a short agenda here. This is the workshop. We have to get through all 5 of these items, Madam Pro Tem.
I understand it. I just got a little bit more to
you.
say, Council President.
We're on a schedule, sir, so I'm going to allow everybody to ask at least one question, and then we're going to move on to Mr. Malone. Madam Pro Tem, you got a question?
Yes. Hi, Frank. How are you today?
One question.
Hello.
We have citizens that are afraid to sit on their porches I just picked up one today and I couldn't see her house from the overgrowth on a vacant house next door to her until I actually pulled in front of her house. And she's afraid to sit on the porch.
Mhm.
And this is on Cortland.
Right. That
So what-
one,
Right.
that one, not to pass the dollar, but that one I think is more that we need to come up with a better work plan with the city DPW. And I know that they're working on a very, very short staff and limit. But I think that the city properties, we just need to kind of coordinate somewhat better with DPW and getting the crews out there on a scheduled basis. That's not under my, purview. So I don't want to, don't want to make any suggestions, because that's not my thing to control.
You're right on with that one, Mr. Haywood. I figured it would come up in conversation with Mr. Reese later. I want to make sure that we get to all 5 people on the list, including the attorney who's probably going to need a little bit of time. Mr. Shop, you said you had a quick question?
Yes, I did.
Okay, we're at 20 minutes for this one, and we allocated 20 minutes for each, and I know everybody's going to run over, so.
Okay. So real quick, Mr. Haywood, I appreciate the fact that you said you're willing to work with anybody, but I can only speak from personal experience, and I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going with this. 310 Pilgrim. We were not given that opportunity. My son was not given that opportunity. We were not allowed that opportunity. Y'all came down on us with a full-blown hammer. Showed no mercy, no compassion, no understanding. Right now, we're at $175 and growing.
And I
from
appreciate,
just what y'all
I
did.
appreciate the
So
statement.
don't tell me
but-
that
but
y'all
let's
work
make
with
sure.
us.
So Mr. Malone, if you be next to explain
Yeah.
the ticketing process,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we give 20 minutes to each thing. And I would encourage Mr. Haywood, if you have an opportunity to give some a one-on-one time with the councilman from the 3rd district so that he could have that issue addressed in a more private.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. That. So we went out of order here. We would have wanted to start it out with Mr. Malone, but it actually worked better that Frank worked us backwards to the process. So this is a good opportunity now for you to talk about the violations and tickets and how you walk through code enforcement. So the timing's actually great.
Okay,
Floor is yours.
so about 90% of all tickets that I write usually come from either the real estate window from citizens coming in to complain, or from stuff Frank rides around and sees.
Okay.
Before anyone gets a ticket, it's a letter that usually goes out. So sometimes, because some on certain cases, I will just issue a ticket. If the property has been ignored, prime example, when you brought up the grass being cut, it's July. People usually start cutting grass in when the spring comes?
April.
So if you haven't cut the backyard of your house since April, that's no excuse. Rats, rodents, those kind of rodents usually nest in high grass. I'm 100% sure anyone here doesn't really want to be living next to rats. I get calls every day on the weekend, 9 o'clock at night from certain residents. They're scared to go outside to take trash out because it's a rat big as my foot in their backyard, or it's a possum, or it's a raccoon, or something of that nature. Dogs hide in high grass. So if I come out and I see it and it deserves a ticket is usually issued. Now, I will dismiss a ticket if you cut the grass, but you have to communicate. I can only help you as long as you're willing to help yourself. If you ignore it, then it comes back on me like I'm not doing my job. That's usually how the situation goes.
Okay, so
Madam Pro Tem had her hand up, and then Ms. Manica, Madam Pro Tem, if you would.
As you stated, most people start cutting their grass in April. So that should be the same for the city properties, because the house that Miss Washington lives next door to should not be that high if we were to follow what you just said.
Well, I can't comment
I know,
for DPW.
I know, I just wanted the people to know. Thank you.
You were also never able to put bids in for grass cutting this year. You have some more, Mr. Malone?
No,
I'm sorry, Ms.
Ms.
Manica.
Manica had her hand up.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on our discussion. Our discussion is just discussion about what they're doing, or are we discussing the ordinance?
So the way it's listed here is this is a full, first, before we even get into things that needed to be changed, we thought we should understand how the mechanics of the thing actually works. So this update process is for us as new council people, as well as the citizens who on a regular basis might not have an opportunity to sit down with the full ordinance manual or have a one-on-one conversation with the building inspector, the code enforcement officer, DPW, the city attorney, as well as our adjunct attorneys to explain the process. So this is a way of opening it up. We're obviously going to have to do more work on this if there are things that are not working, but in order to make an assessment on what is working and what is not working, this public forum was set up for that purpose, to really go through and make sure that we understand the mechanics of it and address anything that might need to be changed.
So then my question is, do we have any time, like actual 14 days?
So
30 days?
when most tickets are written, it's automatically generated a 14-day grace period. And I believe that on the ordinance letter, it's a 7 to 14-day grace period as well. But it's kind of easy to help somebody if somebody calls and say, hey, I don't have it right now. Can I get a little bit more time? That's a quick note in the system. Can you give me a call back on whatever date and let me know where we at with it? But if you don't extend the phone call to say, hey, I don't have it, or hey, I got this going on or that going on, we take it as it's ignored. And a good percentage of enforcement letters and tickets go ignored. So when people see a property that they've been complaining about for months or or longer than that, and it looks like we're not doing anything, it's just, I wrote you a ticket and you said, I'll pay Highland Park when I feel like it, or I'll address it when I address it. So when I keep sending the same ticket out, it becomes more, we spending more on paper than we getting back. It's not worth it anymore.
Mr. Haywood said something like 5% response.
Yeah, it's about
So
that.
that's like out of 100 tickets issued, they're only getting response from 5 people out of 100. I'm sure that's got to be.
I wrote
interesting.
over 100 tickets in the month of May, and when I had court the following month, I think I had court for 8 people.
Okay, wow, and that's higher than that. Okay, Mr. Sharpie, did you have questions for
Yeah.
Mr. Malone specific
Yeah.
to his tick violations and
Yes,
tickets?
sir. Absolutely. So, so my particular issue was not about grass. Okay. My particular issue was about a great deal of trash that got dumped into the backyard of a property that I bought and gave to my son. Okay, instead of y'all giving us an opportunity to clean it out and get it done with, because you know, it's funny, before the administration changed hands, we had a good understanding that we would pay something to the city and Mr. Faison and then would come out and haul it away from us. This current administration does not wish to do that. They don't want to give the residents that option, or maybe it's just me that they don't want to give that option to. Okay, I don't know. But the ticket was issued for the trash in the bag. No warning, no updates, no time or opportunity to get anything done. We were just pushed in front of your glorious judge and issued a $175 fine in what you expect us to pay.
So that comes from ignoring the initial ticket. So
we didn't ignore anything.
So
I'm pretty sure you know I didn't.
If I had a
anything.
computer up in front of me, because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So if I had a computer in front of me, I can show you when I issued the first ticket of August of 2021. This is right before I got married. Hold on, listen. It's 2023. The stuff still stayed there. I got calls late at night from the neighbor that stays on the other side,
I know
the actual homeowner,
yeah.
and she complained to me nonstop. She complained to the animal control officer nonstop.
Okay.
She called me more than my mother calls me.
Okay, so let me ask you a quick question here, just hypothetically, because I know we got to move forward quickly. Okay, so she called, complained. Perfect. Okay. Weaponized in the city against another resident. Beautiful. What is being done about the bricks and the gravel and the trash that her workers left piled up on the side of my home that we didn't complain about. But you know about, the chief knows about, ain't nobody came out and ticketed that. That's piled up on the side of my home. We don't complain against neighbors in the city of Highland Park. If you live here, we work with one another. We don't rat one another out. We don't treat one another like trash, okay? So clearly she doesn't live here, which is obvious. But what about the gravel and the trash she left piled up on the side of my home when she redid her porch and took all of them bricks and stuck them up to the side of my home, and nobody says nothing about that? And I know you saw them.
Well,
Councilman
Is
Ashafi.
this,
Wait a minute.
hold on a second. Is this, the question that Mr. Malone is supposed to be answering for us today is not about any individual
Mhm.
situation that occurred. It's about, in general, how violations are addressed and how tickets are written.
I
I don't
understand
think,
that,
I
Council
don't think the
President.
person,
All I'm
I don't
saying
think
is,
the person
I
to
was
be able
just
to answer
pointing
that
out,
question is here. Ms. Martin, you
I
had your
understand
hand
that. I
up?
was pointing out the obvious fact of how they claim they operate as opposed to how they actually do operate.
Okay, thank you, sir.
It's
Ms. Martin, you
totally
had your
different.
hand up?
Yeah, I have a question. Okay, so you said that, right, right?
Mhm.
Like, walk me through the process, right?
Okay, so
Ticket like 14 days.
it usually goes like this.
Okay.
The real estate agent, Miss Rosalind or Frank or Hillary, would, when I come in the morning, they'll say, "Hey, I got something for you." The lady who stays at 123 Woodward is complaining about her neighbor. The neighbor backyard, the grass is tall as me. She got rats coming from the yard. She got a bunch of trash out there. She wants you to come check it out. I'll usually say, "Did she leave a phone number?" I'll call and try to get more into it. I'll come look at the property and say, "Yeah, I can see why you're complaining." I'll ask Hillary to send a letter. The letter is for you to say, "Hey, I don't really have the funds to cut my backyard right now. I try to keep the front clean. It's tight. You got whatever going on. Can you work with me?" Yeah, I can work with you, but we got to address it. We can't just, this can't go ignored. If you go it and ignore it, or you keep saying, "Hey, it's the first. Can I get to the 10th? Hey, it's the 10th. I know I said I'll do it. Can I get to the 15th? Hey, it's the 15th. Can I get to the 20th?" We can't keep doing that, because you're going to take it as, "Oh, they're getting favoritism because I know somebody else that you wrote a ticket to around the corner."
Okay, so you communicate with them, the letter, right?
Mhm.
After the letter, you're notified.
It's
It's a ticket.
yes. So if you ignore the letter, or you don't call and say, "Hey, this is what I have going on."
Then the ticket comes in to you.
Correct.
Okay, and so then after the ticket is written, that person is then to come up here and pay the fine, correct?
Most of the time, people usually come up here and say, "If I take care of this, can you dismiss the ticket? If you took care of it, we can dismiss the ticket."
They don't have to pay.
No.
Okay, and then my next question is, to get that they ignore that and don't come in and take what's the next person?
So that's where the disconnect kind of comes in the process. Before we changed the administrations with the new legal department, I had a guy that owns a couple of duplexes on Elmhurst.
Mhm.
I've been writing this guy tickets for quite some time. Yeah, and it went ignored. But luckily, we have somebody who's extremely proactive, and he drugged this man into court, and he fixed everything that he was supposed to fix and paid a very large fine. But it was years
Process.
on how long it took to get him to do anything.
So then my next question is, why do we wait years? Like, why do we wait over 365 days?
So when I write the ticket, like if I wrote you a ticket because you didn't do something's wrong with your home, I can't force you to pay it or force you to correct the issue. If you ignore it, nothing really happens. The ticket usually goes into default and it just adds and adds and adds. But if you never come in and say, "Hey, I got this ticket I want to address," or you just ignore it, then it just sits there. And the problem just lies there and it gets worse and worse and worse.
Okay, and then after saying 2 years, 3 years, however many years,
Mhm.
then it's no longer yours to build, correct?
So we've kind of changed it. I don't want to keep writing you a ticket for something that you ignore. After so long, we've been forwarding stuff to attorney's office, and he's been dragging people into nuisance abatement court. And it looks like that method is working. We've been getting more results.
Is that the same thing businesses as well?
Correct.
Okay. All right, if we don't have any more questions, we can move on to the maintenance of city-owned properties from Mr. Reese. Thank you so much, Mr. Malone. We're not taking questions during the workshop, sir. Yeah, so if you have any individual concern, you can let your council person know for your district. This is for people in the audience. If you had any specific concern, if you could reach out to your council person from your district, they can bring your complaint up forward and they can address it at some point in the future. Okay? All your council people are here tonight, so you can pass that on to them and then we can address it in the future as we move forward. Tonight, it's really for information sharing and gathering. Mr. Reese, we're going to turn it over to you. The next item on the agenda, that's the maintenance of city-owned properties. If you could take it away. If you could just give us an overview of the process, and I'm sure members of council would.
Pretty much, most of my processes, I receive a phone call, either from the citizens or, someone else throughout Highland Park about a certain property. I'll go out or I'll send, one of my crew members out to actually, take a look at the property, see what has to be done.
Okay.
And then we go from there.
There's been a number of questions about grass. Could you let us know what our current grass situation is? I don't believe we ever got approval to get those bids put out for this year, did we?
No, sir.
So that had a definite negative effect on the outcome for this year. Not being able to get those out was detrimental.
Correct.
Do you have a strategic plan at this point with the limited resources that you have on addressing that grass issue? Because I saw the coyotes myself. I saw them. Early in the morning, I saw the coyotes walking in pairs.
Coyotes are everywhere.
Yeah, but I mean, and they were coming through tall grass. I was coming to Rosa Parks from the city and I saw them with my own eyes. And so now I understand the full significance, the damage that was done by not getting those bids out there. Do you have some sort of way to, any information you could share with us on what your strategic plan is for dealing with the critical areas?
Right now, we are cutting in one of the most areas that hadn't been cut in the last 2 years.
Okay.
Which was down in that Stevens Church Ferris area.
Okay.
So all that area actually has been cut.
Okay.
They will proceed over between Puritan and 6 Mile, across to that Rosa Parks area. That wasn't cut in probably 2 years. So this was, something that I came into.
Okay.
They are in the process of actually cutting that area right now. In between me trying to keep them in a certain neighborhood that hasn't had that type of kind of attention, they still have to go out and still have to maintain City Hall, police station, the library, potholes still have to be done.
Correct.
I have a very limited staff.
Is there any resources that we could offer or citizens could offer as far as helping you identify areas that might be critical or problematic? Things that we're, getting ahead of the problem before it actually snowballs. Is there anything that we can do? Is there anything that citizens can do to help you out?
We know of the most problem areas.
Okay.
It's just, trying to get to them, based on the staff and the equipment that I have. I have 3 tractors up running now, which has been the first. But the other problem is I have lawnmowers it's not meant to cut grass. It's called.
Yeah.
We need certain equipment, but they're doing the best that they can do.
Okay.
With with the equipment they have. I get a lot of calls to certain people's houses, the animals, the roads, the grass, and I tend to point out certain things to where they can help us, because I'm also called to a lot of houses and there's garbage everywhere. There's trash. So there are certain things that I, try to point out to them to help us also, towards the rodents. A lot of calls when I get, when they have kids outside, and kids and the seniors, I will always try to at least, get them over there in those, 2 to 3 days to, try to cut that down.
Okay. Council, do we have any questions for Mr. Reese? Pro Tem?
Hi, can I have a contact number for you, please?
Sure, 734-790-2184.
Mhm. 790-2184. 2184.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Martin had her hand up first. I see you, Mr. Shafi.
Question, what are the hours?
DPW hours the most 8 to 4. But certain seasonals don't work 8 to 4. Some are 8 to 4, some are 9 to 3, depending on the workers. Yes. It depends on the day. So it'll be, it could be 10, it could be 8, it could be 6. It depends, you know, sometimes they can get away from certain areas, sometimes they can't.
How do you decide, like, is there to be done versus this?
Right now, I'm in problem areas. So right now, like I said, I'm going after areas that hasn't been cut or maintained in the last 2 years.
Okay.
So, you know, that's what I'm fighting now. And then, like I said, and then, you know, in between, we still have to keep certain areas of the city, right? But
So that there's more, not track.
yes. Maybe not. I don't know. I'd have to, but I do have 3 tractors running now, so that's a first.
And are you open to hiring more people? And if so, what happens?
That's not up to me.
My last question is, are you open to tapping into some of those like label ready places where you can, you know, they can do something like that, versus city hall, but pick up the garbage, where the other 8 or 10 workers are doing like grass and stuff like that.
That's also not up to me.
And then my last question is, how do you decide if it's a good thing or a how do you guys decide?
He's on the ticket side. I do the maintaining side. So it's not a, you know, it comes to me if it has to be cut, if it has to be maintained. It's a, no, I don't get in his side.
Right, so I'm assuming it's, if the city owns it, that's where it would be, right?
Yes.
And if the city doesn't, that's where it would be.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, Mr. Bosnick, you'll be up next. Mr. Al-Shafi, your question?
Mr. Reese, I understand that you guys are shorthanded. I get that. This council just gave DPW a $75,000 increase. Pretty sure that can be used towards some new equipment. Have we looked for new equipment for you? You know, I haven't seen an RFP or RFQ come across our desk, but you do have a $75,000 increase to your department, okay, from this budget that we just did. So, and maybe, and it's just an option, maybe you can reach out to some Highland Park residents, in which I'm sure it's a lot of young men here who would love a summer job working for the city outside cutting grass. So maybe we can look at some seasonal workers to increase the volume so that it'll free the more experienced guys up for more important things. Because I know you're tied down trying to do that, because there are some potholes that need to be patched. It's a lot that needs to be done, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, things that used to get done, they haven't been done in a while. You know what I'm saying? So maybe we can look at some seasonal workers, and maybe that $75,000 increase can be of some help to you, along with some new equipment.
Okay.
Thank
That's
you.
an
I will
excellent
have to
idea.
speak with-
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Reese. I appreciate that. I know that's more for your boss and not necessarily for you, but thank you so much for that. So we can move on to the nuisance abatement program, the legal process with Attorney Michael Bosnick. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Thank everybody for having me out here tonight. I'll just touch on a few things that we've been doing differently with respect to nuisance abatement. Last spring, we initiated a program where we went to district court instead of circuit court. I think in previous years, Highland Park went to circuit court to try to address some of these matters, and it turned out to be very, very time consuming and very, very difficult. So what we've done in a number of other communities is we deal with at the district court level, the local courts. and we've had much more success there. Michigan law allows us to file for abatement relief in our district courts. So that's what we started this spring. We started with 3 properties that we put through initially, and then we wound up submitting on about 10 other more properties that are at the court waiting to be scheduled. And then there's about another 20 or 30 properties that are on their way through the queue that are in the process of getting their motions put together to be presented to the court. Procedurally, I wish I could take credit for dragging people to court like Officer Malone said, but unfortunately I'm unable to drag people to court. But we've been pretty enthused about the response that we've been getting from people, from citizens and defendants. So the way it starts is Mr. Haywood or Mr. Malone would notify me of a particular problem property that they would like to have addressed and have abated. They would forward me a copy of the tickets that were issued, some photographs, and then usually the building department activity log, which kind of gives you a sense. Mr. Malone talked about the 1 property or 3 properties that had been problems for years. It really educates the court and gives them more insight when they can see if a property's been a 2-month problem or a 2-year problem. So all of that material is compiled into a motion that we put together. Then we file it with the district court under Michigan Compiled Law 600.8302. We will hand deliver that motion to the court. The court will schedule the motion. In that motion, we request the court sign an order that would allow us to do any variety of things. It may be a property that we just need the exterior cleaned up and some debris and maybe inoperable vehicles removed. We could ask that certain properties be secured and boarded up against intrusion. We could even ask the court to allow us to tear down structures if they're unsafe, like Mr. Haywood talked about certain unsafe buildings. There are probably some structures in the city that we should try to demolish and clear those sites just for the general safety and welfare of the public. So then the court schedules those matters. We've had 3 of them scheduled in court. So far today, those were the cases that Officer Malone referred to with the duplexes on Elmhurst. This is a gentleman, a landlord who had longstanding issues in terms of code enforcement, and he was able to come in. He actually hired an attorney. The attorney is helping us work things out with him. So I've had 2 court dates with him already. He's boarded up his properties. He's cleaned his exteriors. He is going through the process of trying to get his permit for vacant structures. So we're very, very pleased with the initial reports there, and we're hoping we can make more progress with the cases that are in the pipeline. As Mr. Haywood and Mr. Malone said, the vast majority of individuals that receive citations, very, very few of them actually respond. Even if someone's upset and they're not happy about getting a citation, we're in a much better place if they respond to us, even if it's not responding in a particularly pleasant manner, because at least we're engaged in the building department. And at least for myself, what we want is compliance. We want these properties to be cleaned up. If the citizens themselves can do it, if the property owners can do that, but they need time, that's fine. If they need us to ask the court to provide a break on the fines or do whatever we need to do, we're always happy to do that because we want compliance. We want to keep a safe and environment for everybody in the city, property owners and people walking with their children or whatnot, business owners. So as I indicated, if the defendant does not appear at court as scheduled, so far the ones that have gone through, we've had the defendants appear, but if they don't, we just ask the judge to sign the order. At that point, we could go ahead and abate the property under the court order. And once we give the defendant proper notice, if the defendant does appear, we try to work with them to the extent that we're able, that they need time to remediate the property. We're happy to offer that rather than the city do that and put it on the tax roll. Another option is if we appear and the defendant appears. Sometimes the defendants in other communities, they will what's called a stipulate, or they'll agree to sign an order. They'll say, okay, I'll let you come up and abate my property, but give me 30 days, give me 60 days, and I'll agree to the order. And we'll usually say, okay, there's some good faith here, that's fine. And we'll sign, the judge will sign that off, and then the case doesn't have to come back to court. If the property is resolved before that due date, no further action. But if it's not, then we're ready to move in and do what needs to be done. As I indicated, this is something that we started this spring. We've done this district court abatement in a number of communities. Generally, the cases move much faster, and the court's been very cooperative in scheduling these matters for us. as I said, we've got about 10 or so in the queue. 3 of them have actually been to court, and about another 20 or so that are coming up. For the next couple of years, I'm hope we can get 100 or 200 of these cases filed and properties resolved. I know, I think when I first came in and sat down and spoke with Mr. Haywood, he said there's hundreds of properties that need addressing. So hopefully, it'll prove as a way to sort of stimulate people to take care of their own property maintenance issues if they see that there's activity and that the city is addressing these things, and maybe it'll be less of a need for the city to address it in the future. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Actually, no, Mr. Bosnick, I wanted to turn it over to, your update is perfect. So
Okay.
at this point, I want to pass it over to Ms. Burton.
And I'm always happy to come back if you want to have me come back
Absolutely,
on a study
absolutely.
session.
Yeah,
No
we're going to
worries
wrap
at
it
all.
up. We'll be wrapping it up in 5 minutes. So Ms. Burton's going to take us out. Thank you so much. This is a general question. I figure have you close us out here. We're at 6:50. Got 5 minutes.
Everyone. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank Councilwoman or Council Pro Tem Robinson, because she really was one of the ones that was spearheading this. Of course, it's very important to the mayor to address the issue regarding blight. So I thank all of the individuals that came before me. As it relates to the blighted properties in terms of the legal process, tickets, Mike dealt pretty much with what happens with the properties in terms of whether we're going to take them or whether we're going to try to force people to fix them up.
Okay.
But the ticket process, Malone did go through it a little bit, but this is what is happening. This is why we can't really move forward. In 2021, we changed a lot of the infractions to civil violations.
Okay.
And when that happened, they were no longer misdemeanors. And so they didn't have the teeth that it had in the past in terms of saying, okay, now you have a misdemeanor, and misdemeanors were automatically set for court. When you have a civil infraction, once that ticket is written, then it goes into the system. There's electronic tickets that are written, they go into the system, and then they're uploaded by the court within a couple days. Once they're uploaded, you have 14 days to respond. Those individuals can pay within that time frame, or they can request a hearing within a 14-day window. If they fail to request a hearing and they fail to pay, a default is entered. When that default is entered, you have a fine that is attached to that particular ticket, which is typically $150 for most of them. You have a $25 fee for defaulting, for not responding at all. And then you have a late fee if you don't pay the fine within 56 days. So the costs add up over time. However, if you request a hearing, then you'll be given a date automatically by the court. If you're given a court date, that's within 30 days that you'll appear. Now you can request an informal hearing, which will go before the magistrate. If you request a formal hearing, it's typically when you would have an attorney, and then that would come on the misdemeanor docket before the judge. The judge has been very lenient as it relates to working with people if they say, I need time to pay, or we oftentimes will adjourn the matters in order for people to clean up the properties or to come into compliance. Because at the end of the day, we're not trying to saddle people with misdemeanors. However, they do become misdemeanors up on the third violation. So you'll have, the first time you'll have a civil infraction, second time you have a civil infraction, and the third time it'll be a misdemeanor and a $500 fine. So it can become very expensive. And when we changed it, again, it wasn't to, saddle people with misdemeanors, but then we don't have a response, because when they don't respond, they get a default and then you don't hear from them. Now, internally, there are things that we need to work on. We need to start doing some show causes and have people come in and explain either why they haven't come into compliance or, really why they haven't paid. That's difficult to do. We have a small court. We have, not a big staff. We have to find another day. We got one judge. We have a magistrate, but we have one judge. And so it's hard to work all of that out, but we are going to have to try to find, if it's nothing but one day out of the month, to do that. Because the ordinances, if they don't have teeth, then, they just exist on the books. And that's what Councilwoman Robinson was referring to. Now, what was handed out or what was sent to council was the nuisance abatement ordinance. We're going to change that. So I didn't hand that out to, the citizens, because Mike and I talked, and at some point that needs to be revised. But we also have an issue as to whether or not we're going to reconnect with MuniCode to have them revise all of our ordinances. But what I would like council to do is to take a look at the nuisance abatement ordinance and look at all the things that have been said today. And, you know, figure out, okay, well, Malone is doing this and so is doing that. Certainly send any questions that you have to the mayor, and the mayor will direct those to the proper party. Ultimately, they will probably, you know, come to me to also, you know, make sure that they're being addressed. But we need to find out a way that we can add more teeth to the ordinance. It's not as much as changing the substance, but really finding a way, you know, for enforcement. You know, we're not, again, trying to browbeat people over the head, but most people are giving warnings. You know, you get two times, the third time, then that's when it's a misdemeanor. So we're just asking the citizens to help us to restore the beauty to Highland Park. It's still beautiful, but some of the dangerous buildings and some of the blight is overshadowing, you know, the beautiful and the glorious and the gems that we have here. And so, you know, we want to work with council. The administration wants to work with council. And I know the council wants to work with the administration. We need more than one workshop, though, Council President. I try to put a lot
Absolutely. So this
in a
is
small time frame.
this is
It's
exactly
almost
what I
7.
wanted. I had an agenda. I have a document that I can go back to my desk and work on, so that when we show up, we actually know what we're doing, and individuals can bring up valid points that are in writing, and we can address those specifically and find out what in paragraph where, section what needs to be changed to make this more enforceable. And I do thank you very much for that. I typically need everything in writing. I'm a C student, so I have to write everything down. So I would prefer that we continue this format where we have an agenda. If we have an agenda for a workshop out, we can work with this. And now, like I said, we have our marching order, so other members of council can take this document and we can actually put the work in to make those changes. And I do thank you so much, Ms. Burton, for this.
Okay, so civil infractions ordinance, the nuisance abatement ordinance, that needs to be tweaked a little bit, you know,
Okay.
in terms of talking to Mike. But that civil infractions ordinance really is dictating a lot outside of the dangerous buildings per se. But we know that when the grass gets high, you know, when the structures start falling down, then those issues need to be addressed beyond just people getting a ticket for it, because they're, at this point, they're ignoring us. And so we do have to do something, take some steps to make sure that people come into compliance. And if anybody has any questions or concerns, I'll be here after the meeting.
All right, thank you so much, ma'am. We're at 6:55, 6:56. At this time, I'm going to declare the workshop adjourned. One question, Mr.
One more, yeah, I did want to recognize Mr. Hinton. Mr. Hinton, of course, a lot of this falls up under his department, community
Up under
development.
CED, yes.
And so, yeah, so he's here, and we did talk earlier, asked him if he wanted to be on the agenda. He said he did not. Mr. Bozick is also indicating if any of the council members have any questions for him, then you know, I can give you his email.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
we're at 6:56 and we have concluded all the business on today's workshop. I thank everyone for their participation. At this point, we will declare the workshop meeting adjourned. Thank you.